All right, welcome everybody to Learning to Let Go. We're here to talk about a really interesting topic. First of all, I hope all of you guys had a good holiday and everyone had their fun and ate their fun foods and just let go of feeling bad about it because that's what we tend to do. This topic I think is really important. Like when we go back to like the whole thing about reclaiming our energy, reclaiming our power. It's I think a key one of the key elements of learning to really draw back your energy because we tend to learn to resist or not learn but we tend to resist many of our experiences in life, and we resist in many different ways. And so what we want to do is um, learn to relax a little bit more, learn to let go a little bit more, so that we're experiencing things from a different vibration. Now, I'll explain what that means in a little bit. But this workshop, we're going to cover, a couple of main topics here. What is resistance, and how to identify it? So, like, how does it show up in the different aspects of our life? Because we're not always aware that we're in a place of resistance. So learning how to identify it is a big first step, and all the different ways that we do. We're going to talk, and after that we'll talk a little bit about moving into our or moving out of, I should say, our comfort zone and moving into the discomforts in life that we tend to shy away from. So in all of life there is um, the stuff that we cling to, the stuff that feels good, the stuff that we attach ourselves to, and often enough what we can label that as is like our comfort zone, and then there's the stuff that we push away from, the stuff that we avoid, the stuff that makes us feel a little icky and not so good. And so we're going to talk about how important it is to start to come out of your comfort zone on a regular basis, and why that is important. And then lastly, we're just going to talk a little bit about some great um, tools that help us come out of these areas of resistance and tension, so that as this stuff comes up in our life, as the resistance comes up, we learn to identify, we learn to relax with it, and we learn to then redirect our energy in a more effective ways. So instead of leaking it out everywhere in many different places, we're going to learn to redirect it. So, I don't know how many of you, I mean, we're a small group here today. I was always a Trekkie, a Star Trek fan, and so anybody who has ever watched Star Trek or into it would understand that first, that question up at the top there. Resistance is what? And if you're a Borg fan or if you're a Star Trek fan, resistance is futile. It is a common saying in Star Trek, and it's true in everyday life. It says as we resist our experiences, we we start to literally get into a drain of our energy and into a negative feeling place. And so, you know, um, to really understand what it is to be in a place of resistance, we're going to simplify it very, very, very simple. Anytime you're feeling negative, anytime you're feeling negative, you're in a place of resistance. And so negative feeling can be anything from fear to sadness to boredom to frustration to anger to pride to so whatever, anything that has you feeling a little not so good. And and so it's ultimately easy to tell if I'm feeling positive, I'm feeling good, I'm not in a place of resistance. If I'm feeling in any one of those realms, and however you want to color it, whatever label you want to give it, but anything that feels negative, then I'm in a place of resistance. And that's the thing. It's this and that. And and again, like anytime we're in any kind of those lower emotions, any kind of emotion that is like of the negative form, we are leaking out our energy. The question is, but isn't it sometimes very appropriate to feel sad, like when someone dies, similar to being fearful? Yeah. And here's the thing about we'll talk a little bit more about that subject. It's not only all right to feel that stuff. It is your right. It is your right to feel whatever it is you're feeling in that moment. But the key is, do you let that, do you stay stuck in the resistance, or do you learn to accept it, which is the biggest topic of conversation today? Learn to accept it and feel it and own it and be with it consciously instead of letting it perpetuate as an unconscious pattern, right? And so we'll get into that topic very soon. So this next slide, though, is to me a very important one, and it's a big topic of conversation in a lot of my workshops, and it explains very much so that this whole idea of the scale of emotions and the map of consciousness. And so this map that you're seeing in front of your screen right now is from the book Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. And he is one of my favorite authors. He's an MD and a psychiatrist, but he's also what he refers to himself. Well, he died last year, and he was quite old, and he's still been doing his workshops and presentations and all that stuff. And he has a load of books out there, but this first one is the one you'd start with, called Power versus Force, which gives you the idea about like this whole concept of living from a place of power versus living in a place of force. And so if you look at the scale, everything at the 200 mark. So it's a scale. It's a logarithmic scale from 0 to 1,000. Let's not worry about the scale right now, and I'm not too worried about the numbers. We're just showing you this right now to help with the topic of conversation. We'll explore it more in the third workshop coming up in January with this profile. So that 200 mark, where you see the courage, the line of courage and affirmation. Everything below the 200 mark is considered a place of force, or a place of resistance, or a place of tension. Basically, everything below that 200 mark is a negative charge. It's a drain on your energy, and everything above that line is a positive charge. It's drawing energy in. There's a universal law that states that energy is always either going in or out. There's no in between. You're either expanding or contracting. You're either growing or dying. It's one or the other. You're moving to this potential or that potential. And so when you're feeling any of those negative emotions, ultimately you are getting a little bit of a drain on your energy. Now, every one of these levels of consciousness, you can call them, it's not that they're bad or good. It's not that in the negative it's good, it's bad, and in the positive it's good. It's just it has specific consequences. One is a drain. One is drawing energy in, and so. But each level has its purpose, and each level has its trap. Even in the higher realms, there's traps that you have to watch out for, and that's, again, it's a big topic of conversation. But for now, what I want you to understand is when you're vibrating in a place of fear or grief or apathy. I mean, have you ever met anybody who is very apathetic, who is very like just depressed and like no energy, and like they don't even have even like too much lighting in the room is too much for them. They need to kind of shrink in and shrivel up, and a lot of them can. I remember myself being in a state like that before, where you're just curled up in a little ball, and you don't want to face things. It's a very low energy field, and so the better feeling places in our life, the places on top of that 200 line, the places of courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, all that stuff is, love, joy, bliss. As we get into more of those better feeling places, we're drawing energy in. Consciousness is growing, expanding because of that. So, understanding that anytime I'm in one of those lower realms, I'm in a place of resistance. And so the first step of understanding, okay, when am I resisting, is, okay, well, when am I in any of those lower realms? And in some aspects of my life, I may be quite, vibrating quite high in love or reason or acceptance, and in some aspects of my life I may be vibrating quite low. And and everybody has their different things that they that they have to deal with, and everybody, and so, but here's the thing: these levels of consciousness are also points of view. It's perceptions, filters. I'm watching my world through these different points of view. So when I'm feeling fearful, I'm watching the world through unconscious filters of fear. We'll go more into detail of that. And so again, it's um, points of view, levels of consciousness, different states of emotion. It's all the kind of the same thing here. And again, the basic why we brought this up for this conversation is when I'm in the lower realm, below the 200 mark, I'm getting my energy drawn out. I'm in a place of resistance. I'm in a place of negativity. The key, again, is not to think that it's bad to be in a, if you're feeling fearful or if you're feeling sad or if you're feeling a negative emotion. Again, it's an emotion. It's coming up. It's coming up because it's inside you. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. The idea is to start to be with it without the resistance. And at the end of the day, even labeling it as something negative is technically kind of a resistance. Like it's like because it can trigger that label can trigger a fight inside our unconscious mind. So the idea here with emotions is that it's like as within, so without, and like that means that there's no difference between the internal world and the external world. It's I am only going to see, excuse me, I'm only going to see the outside world through my unconscious filters, through how I'm feeling inside. In fact, I can't see out there other than how I'm feeling inside. So the person who's been feeling fear on a regular basis, that fear is inside them, and they look for things to be fearful of out there. Now, how did this all start? Well, I mean, it all starts from a lot of the stuff that we accumulate from, genetically to, and then our first 6 to 7 years of life. We, incorporate and take on all these new beliefs and um, um, uh, uh, what's the word I'm looking for here? Beliefs and habits and patterns that basically run how and affect how we see out there. In fact, when we're talking about the unconscious mind, the numbers are about 90, depending on who you ask, 90 to 96% of our behavior and our perception is governed by our unconscious processes. So the way I perceive life out there, life happens out there. Hopefully you can see. Life happens out there, and I experience it through my nervous system. I see, taste, touch, feel, like it runs through my nervous system. Electrical impulses go into my brain. The back of my brain is full of my past experiences. So whatever I'm experiencing goes into my unconscious back into the memory, gets compared to all past memory, and then perception comes out a fraction of a second later. So all of this happening in a fraction of a second, but it's still a fraction of a second later that I perceive reality. And in that fraction of a second, all of my beliefs, my core belief values have affected how I'm seeing what I'm seeing. Why can, 10 different people watch the same scenario unfold and get 10 different eye accounts of what happened? Or why is it that some things can make some people laugh and some things can offend some people or make some people cry? It's all about those different levels of consciousness and how we're seeing it. And so when we say that somebody made us feel the way we're feeling, so I'm in a relationship with someone and that person does something and I say, you made me feel like this. Well, no, what they did just triggered something inside of you, most likely, and some pattern, and so you perceive it in that way, and it brings up these feelings of hurt. And so the idea here is we've got to learn to be more conscious of the feelings and be with whatever we're experiencing. So be present with, and that's again the key concept of yoga and most spiritual practices. It's just learning to be present, be in the moment, be whatever you want to call it, be in the now, but be more present with what you're feeling. And and the feeling of it is probably one of the most important parts. So from a very young age, we develop this map of reality, these perceptions, these beliefs inside that cause us to see things out there in different ways. We accept a lot of what we've been told from a very young age, a lot of what we've seen from our parents and how they live their lives, and from our peers, and from our teachers, and from our society, and from our and all this stuff. We've accepted all sorts of stuff without questioning it that govern how we see things and how we respond to them. We've all these generalizations inside our map of reality, and some of it causes us to feel good, and some of these beliefs cause us to feel negative. And and some of these perceptions cause us to avert from certain situations, scenarios, or things that make us feel uncomfortable. For instance, I, growing up, believe it or not, was terrified of public speaking. I hated it. To be in front of even three people I didn't know was something terrifying for me. I would be like the, least talkative person. Unless it was family members or people I knew well, I was very shy. And the fact that I'm making a living now out of speaking in front of people, and so back then there was a perception that you know public speaking or being open in front of people or looking stupid in front of people was something that I couldn't do and that was bad and it was going to bring about all sorts of negative things to me. So let me just avoid it. And then my perception changed over many years, and all sorts of different things happened and experiences, and now, oh my God, I love it. So it was something that was out of my comfort zone. So we all have this kind of bubble, and you all know what I'm talking about. And even though I can't see your faces, you all know I can tell. You all know what I'm talking about. We all have this thing called comfort zone that we tend to kind of hang on to, and kind of it's like, let me just stay in my comfort sometimes. Don't challenge my beliefs. Don't challenge my world sometimes. And we all have the stuff that's outside of our bubble that we tend to shy away from and label as all sorts of negative things. And there's people in our life that we label as uncomfortable or that we associate that bring about negative feeling that we avoid, or there's situations. So there's all sorts of things that we avert from, and there's all sorts of things that we stay attached to. The thing about that staying in routine, it's that and routine is something that the unconscious mind is programmed with. The routine is something that the unconscious mind loves. Routine, even a negative pattern routine that brings about negative emotion tends to, if it's what the unconscious mind knows well, it becomes a part of that comfort zone. So let's broaden what we understand about comfort zone, because I made it seem like it's just the stuff that makes us feel good. It's the stuff that we're used to. If we're used to a lot of things that are negative, if we're used to feeling guilty about things, then that becomes a part of our comfort zone. So I hope I clarified that a little bit there, because many people are attached and hang on to negative experiencing things that bring about negative feelings all the time, and they become addicted to that. And that's a bigger conversation. And so let's understand now that pain, uncomfortableness, sorrow, discomfort, however you want to label it, any of those negative feeling things, it's not a cause of all of the people and the places and the things outside of us. It's not out there that is the cause of all of that stuff. It's how we are experiencing or how we are approaching the experience. Am I resisting the experience and tightening up inside and resist and being like all negative, or am I learning to just kind of relax with the experience and see it clearly and stay focused and stay conscious? And that's the key. And I'll go back to that every time. Can we be conscious with it? Because when you're in a place of resistance, when you're in a place of negativity, that's a pattern. It's not your conscious self. You could consciously experience that feeling, but that negativity is just an experience. And so again, it's I can be conscious of what I'm feeling. I can be with the actual physical component of it too, because every feeling has a physical component in my body, because there's no separation between this and that. So the more I can consciously pay attention to what I'm feeling and relax with it instead of resist it. And the analogy I'll give you here, if any of you have ever done, and from the list of people that I feel like I know, you've all done maybe a pigeon pose in a yin class or a yoga class, or a pose that, or a stretch that kind of brings about some discomfort. Again, is it the pose that's bringing about the discomfort, or is it my resistance to what I'm experiencing in my hip that's the cause of the discomfort, or the label that I'm putting on it? So if I'm in a yoga pose and I'm in that stretch and I'm feeling my hip, and I can either be in a resistance about it and clench my jaw and squeeze my shoulders up and squeeze my eyebrows and stop my breathing and kind of just hope that the pose ends really, really fast, or I can focus on what I'm feeling, start to breathe a little deeper, start to relax into the tension that I'm feeling in my hip, and let go into it and accept it instead of resist it. Accept it instead of resist it. I'm going to say that one more time. I like to repeat myself. Accept it instead of resist it. And that, turns out, takes a lot of practice. And so what I'm saying basically, and sometimes this statement can seem kind of bold or broad or generalized, and I'm sure that you can think of all sorts of other scenarios in your mind where that might not be true, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I'm going to pause for a second, take a sip. All your pain, your sorrow, your discomfort is as a result of your resisting your experiences. Simple. So if I am the cause of it, if my own resistance is the cause of it, it means I can take that power back into my own hands and do something about it. So instead of blaming everything else outside of me for how I'm feeling, I'm going to take responsibility for how I'm feeling. Even though the circumstances may not be as I exactly want them, I am still in charge of how I'm feeling in here. When I'm conscious of it, I am in charge. When I am enwrapped or caught in the unconscious process of it, I am not. And so anything that you can watch consciously and relax with it. So if let's say I'm experiencing something and I'm experiencing it through my filters and it's all intense and it's crazy and there's a lot of resistance, and the more I really breathe and the more I relax, the more I just let go, and the more I consciously watch, I clear up the filters, I clear up the filters, I clear up the filters, and then I can see it more clearly. So often, I remember, our perception is being edited by our parts of our unconscious mind. I failed to mention earlier that our conscious mind can only be aware of a small amount of everything that we're intaking unconsciously. There's so much information being thrown at us from an unconscious level. We're picking it up. Our nervous system is processing it every second. But consciously, we're only aware of small amounts. So I can see a lot of stuff out there, but consciously, I'm only aware of a small amount of all that. So the little mechanism inside my brain that kind of filters through all that stuff will cut and paste, like a little editor will cut and paste based on my past beliefs and experiences. And that's how perception comes up. So the more I consciously watch, the more I clear up that picture. Make sense? Let me see some yeses in the chat box. I'm assuming you're all still there. So yes, I like that. A couple yeses. So the idea here is, but going back to the whole comfort zone discussion, our unconscious mind, our ego, loves routine. You know, when you take it out of the routine, that's when resistance starts to get, when it goes beyond the programming that's inside, it tends to, get a little resistant. And it's because of that very reason that we need to do it on a regular basis. We need to learn to let go of holding on to what we feel comfortable and come out of comfort zone, challenge our move into some of the discomforts, move into some of the stuff that doesn't make us feel so good, that brings about fear, especially the stuff that brings about fear, for the simple reason of learning to be okay with it, because sometimes there's stuff in the world that comes up. There's some stuff that's just unavoidable in life. there's some stuff I can avoid. There's some stuff I can take myself away from. Say, okay, this situation I'm going to remove myself from because it's negative. But sometimes this negative situations are, unavoidable. And in those situations, what am I going to do? Am I going to sit and resist it and cause more negativity and cause it to persist more, like Jen wrote earlier, whatever you resist persists? Or am I going to learn to relax and accept what I'm feeling and be okay with it internally and then see what I need to do, how I need to respond externally? Instead of reacting just based on, whatever habit and pattern that I'm watching it through and negativity, can I learn to look at back to the whole levels of consciousness? If I'm in a place of fear, can I start to go up that map of consciousness a little bit and see things from a place of even a place of desire or a place of pride or a place of courage or willingness? Or can I move into acceptance? And that's the idea here. It's like the more I the more I challenge myself and come out of my comfort zone, the more I learn how to deal with my challenges differently instead of getting into all the negative stuff that can come along with it. So if you want to expand your level of consciousness, if you want to move yourself up that scale, if you want to continue to grow as an individual, as a person, spiritually, emotionally, and even professionally and otherwise, you got to learn to come out of your comfort zone. Again, for myself, for my personal, um, story about being terrified of, I'm going to sneeze, sorry, about being terrified of being talking in front of people, and now it brings me more joy than most of the stuff that everything else in my life. Like I love it more than anything. I love to get in front of a group of people, and the bigger the group, the more I am enjoying myself. So maybe because I like a little bit of attention, but the idea here is that if you don't want your if you don't want to shrivel up and die, because again, that whole universal law is if I'm not coming out of my comfort zone, if I'm not growing, then I'm shrinking. If I'm staying stuck in my routine and I just stay in those loops in my brain, if my brain and my nervous system doesn't get challenged with new ideas, new concepts, new experiences, new ways of looking at things, then I'm shriveling and my brain is actually literally dying. My brain cells will die off. But if I stress my nervous system to the right amount and then give it time to recuperate and then and then stress it again and then give it time to recuperate and build and then stress it again, which is what the natural, everything in nature stresses and breaks down and then rebuilds and then stresses and breaks down and rebuilds, and it cycles. And we need to do the same thing. So it's good to be challenged with obstacle. How do you deal with it? Do you deal with it with more resistance, or do you come at it from a place of focus and calmness, which are the two tenets of yoga? Focus and ease. Calmness and ease, sorry. Or focus and ease. Focus and relax with the tensions that are coming up. Now, again, if you want to be one of those people who is okay with what they know and wants to stay in their comfort zone and believes that ignorance is bliss, that's your choice. I'm not telling you not to live that way, but there are consequences to that. And that consequence is that you are going to shrivel up and not live. You're not going to be alive. You're not going to be expanding what you know and what you can experience and what you can handle. And I'll tell you, like I said, for me myself, had I not come out of that comfort zone and explored that stuff, I would have missed out on all sorts of connections with people and experiences with people and financial rewards from my work for the last 10 years. Like it's so there's a lot of benefit. And even for the simple fact that it's a leak of your energy to to just be stuck in those areas of resistance. And so one of the key components in learning to let go resisting is acceptance. And acceptance of the experiences, yes, like the things that are out there, acceptance of the stuff out there, but that's not, it's actually can be very deceiving. What I'm talking about more so is self-acceptance, accepting the feelings inside, because I don't want anybody who is being bullied or abused or anything like that in any kind of relationship, work, personal, romantic, or otherwise, or family. I don't want anyone to just like be okay with someone exerting their will on you and just let them do that. That's not what acceptance means. I'm talking about accepting accepting the negative feelings so you're not resisting them, so that you can clearly see what's happening, so that you can then take the right action. Because if I'm trying to make decisions or take action based on negativity, I don't know if I'm taking the right decision. You know, do I leave this relationship, or do I mend it somehow, fix it somehow, heal it somehow? I don't know, because if I'm coming at it from a negative place, I could leave and that could be the right decision, or I could leave and that could be the wrong decision. Who knows if I'm coming at it from a negative place? But if I'm a little more clearer with what I'm experiencing, with what I'm seeing, if I'm a little more conscious of it, and more in tune with my intuitive factor about it instead of just my left brain about it, then I'm going to be more equipped to make the right decision and take the right action. And even if the right action just means holding your mouth and not saying anything. Acceptance has less to do with what actual decision or move you're going to make out there, or how you're going to respond, and it has more to do with just being okay inside. And to learn to be okay with it, we got to then watch it. And so, and funny, I had this discussion with a friend the other day, and I was trying to explain that, like feelings are something we feel, right? They're called feelings because we feel them. There's something physical about them. Anytime you're experiencing any kind of negative emotion, if you were to close your eyes and scan internally, guaranteed, you're going to find a part of you physically that's reacting more so than everything else. And if you were to sit, so let's say I'm feeling it here in my chest. I'm experiencing something out there that's bringing about some negative emotion, some hurt, some pain. I close my eyes, I scan, I see that it's right here, and I bring all of my attention to it. I bring my focus and my attention, my presentness, I don't know if that's a word, into this feeling right here. And I start to, instead of resisting it and fighting it and trying to change it and labeling it in negative ways, I'm just going to be with it and feel it and relax with it and kind of like invite it in. It's as if I'm inviting a friend into my home. I'm not, just learning to be okay with what you're feeling. And once it's calmed down, once it's starting to relax, then you can redirect and look out there in a different way. But it's a key component to be able to watch consciously, to clear up those filters and to be okay with it. And some stuff that we experience needs a little bit longer to be with. Not just going to go away like that. Some stuff we need to spend a little bit of time with it. It reminds me of a Louis C.K. Interview that he was doing with Conan O'Brien, and he was talking about how what people and texting, and how when you're in your car, like we're so don't want to be with that quietness for even a moment, that like we'll start texting right away just out of boredom. We don't want to have any amount of quietness and distraction, because as soon as there's any kind of quietness and we're distraction free, then sometimes these feelings can be there that we're ignoring. And he talks about how, one time he sat there in his car and he was like about to text someone because he was had these feelings coming about, this emptiness, he called it. And instead he said, no, I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to, be with it. And And he did, and it started to cry, and then it started to feel good. It transitioned. And I'm going to bring that again to. I had a personal experience at one point where I was hurt and I was feeling a lot of intense pain, and I was not used to growing up. I was not used to exploring those negative feelings. I was used to being a rock and solid and all that kind of stuff. So I was, told and taught to some tools to sit and be with it. And at first, it was very intense. It was like it started to intensify because I was resisting. It was intense, and I was resisting. And the more I used these techniques and these breathing exercises, that I was relaxing with it, relaxing with it, relaxing with it. And it got to the point where the more I consciously, so it's in this kind of spectrum, and it's like pain, 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 starting to intensity, intensity, and then it passed this threshold where then it became like a soothing, healing, like loving kind of feeling that just kind of took over me, and it was just this awesome feeling. And so, but it took me being with it long enough in a relaxed way, not in a resistant way, but in a relaxed way, to be okay with it, to watch it consciously long enough to accept it, to be able to accept it, to clear up the filters around it, and to see how healing and soothing it was, of a, and ultimately that's all of that, those negative feelings that we're shying away from, once we face them, once we have faced them, and we see what they really are, then it starts to become easier and easier to face other stuff, because then we see that it's not really that, it wasn't really that bad. It's always worse, in our own minds than it is in actuality. And so a key thing to do is to, again, and start the practice somehow. And it's not always a matter of rushing right into the full experience of it. You can dip your toe in and experience it a little bit at a time. You can do it with the support of a coach or a mentor or a loved one or a good friend. There's many different ways that you can approach this stuff if it's very intense. Because, look, I'm not trying to make everyone seem like this stuff is so easy to deal with, because some of that stuff can be very intense. I know there's stuff that I still avoid feeling myself sometimes, and I have my ways of distracting myself. And that's where sometimes, having the support of my coaches and my mentors have been so important for me. So don't feel like you have to jump right into it and do it alone. There is a lot of support out there. If you need some direct help, contact me as well, and I'm sure to send you in the right directions. If not, help you myself. So rather than resisting your experiences, we need to learn to accept and relax with them more. There's a couple of good resources. Oh yeah, sorry. One quick question. So acceptance is the first. Not actually the? I shouldn't say it's the first step. Acceptance is the step of learning to let go. But sometimes just asking yourself that important question: what am I not accepting, or what am I resisting? What am I not accepting, or what am I not resisting? Asking that question, not necessarily trying to figure out the answer with your left brain either all the time. If it comes to you, it comes to you. But ask the question, and sometimes it sounds like mystical, but wait for the answer to come to you more naturally. The last little bit, I'll just show you. I have these books up on the screen here. They're great tools that will accompany the discussion that we had. One's called The Radical Self-Acceptance by Tara Brach. She's a psychologist. Awesome book. Gives some great tools in there on self-acceptance practices. Power versus Force, Dr. David Hawkins, or any of his books, but I would start with that one. Transcending the Levels of Consciousness from Dr. Hawkins is also a good one that talks about every level of consciousness has its own chapter, talks about the traps, talks about the benefits of each level. Even the negative levels have their benefits. There's a purpose for them. And one of my favorite books of all time, The Astonishing Power of Emotions by Esther and Jerry Hicks. That one is amazing. Gives the second half of the book is the most important part. Gives 30 concrete examples of real life situations or relationships where we could be in the negative, and how we can start to get more into the positive thought patterns. But also, I would say with that book, before you read it, discount at the beginning where the information is coming from and the authors and all that kind of stuff. and just read the book anyway. Trust me on this one. The tool that they're giving and the analogy that they give is solid and worth the effort. Get the audio book if you're not into reading, or contact me, book a session. I'll explain the concepts behind you. But uh, what I'm going to do right now is open up to any questions that might be lingering. So please feel free, if you have a question, just write it out in the text. If it's a long question, raise your hand, and I will maybe see if bringing you up into the screen and your webcam so you can ask the question out loud. So any questions out there, ladies and gentlemen? If there's no questions, what I'm going to assume is that I just did such a great job doing this, putting this together, that it's all cleared up. But I'm sure that a lot of questions may come up in the near future. Please feel free to contact me. Oh, there's a question that might be coming up. Or not. Okay, so the next workshop is coming up. I believe, I'm forgetting right now, it's sometime in the beginning of January. We will send you all the information, and I will send you a link with this recording as well. Oh, it's January 8th. Thanks, Kelly. So January 8th is the next one. Again, this one's also about reclaiming our power, and it will talk more about the power versus force conversation, the map of consciousness, but more so we'll talk about living your life from a purposeful place, and why that was such a big topic in our whole conversation about reclaiming your power. So I hope everybody enjoyed themselves. If you're ever in Ottawa, come check out some of my classes at Pure Yoga, and we'll hope to see you guys all soon. Take care. Au revoir.